Good morning. Welcome to Coffee with Kelly this morning. I am enjoying a pumpkin spice latte. I decided to cut a few calories and skip the whipped cream, and it's not the same, but it is still pretty good. It tastes a little bit like a hug. I'm ready for fall, even though the weather in Colorado apparently is not. It's been in the 90s all week, which is lovely. So last week we talked about interviews and the things that you can't be asked during an interview. This week I want to talk about sort of that next step. So one of the things you can't be asked about during an interview or during the candidacy process is a disability. But once you cross over into having a job offer, then an employer can ask about a disability. So I'll give you a scenario. Someone walks into a job interview with a seeing eye dog, and the employer conducts the interview, doesn't ask anything about the seeing eye dog. I'm probably not using the politically correct term for that, the service animal. The employer can then call and offer the job to the employee and then can ask about a disability. And before that point, the only question the employer can ask is, can you perform the job duties with or without a reasonable accommodation? So then the question can come up, and typically the employee is going to raise that conversation, but if not, the employer can ask, what accommodations do you need for your disability? And it's entirely possible that the employee doesn't need any accommodations. The other scenario I want to raise is if someone has an invisible disability, something like a mental health condition, something along the lines of a learning disability such as a dyslexia or difficulty reading, difficulty using a computer screen without an accommodation. The employer is not going to usually prompt that conversation because it's not obvious. Sometimes bigger employers will have something like that in their onboarding paperwork where we'll ask if you need an accommodation to perform your job. But if you have a disability and you need to be able to disclose that to the employer, the time to do that is at the job offer stage, or when it becomes apparent that you're going to need an accommodation for the job. So really, that's the ideal situation, is that the employee raises that they have a disability that needs an accommodation, because it then begins the interactive process where the employee and the employer go back and forth trying to negotiate something that's going to make it possible for that employee to perform the job even though they have a disability. So a quick overview of that, some more of those early stages of getting your foot in the door at a job and some of the snags that can come up. If you have been feel you've been discriminated against because of a disability, or you have a disability and you're having a hard time making that work with or without an accommodation at your job place, please don't hesitate to contact Riley Law, and we can help walk you through that process. Thanks for joining me this week. Everyone have a great weekend.